What's up, party people? It's Keys Dan, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live and in living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do you go? DJLittleRock.com. Check availability, get a free price quote, and you can have me, possibly, at your next event. Entertaining you, entertaining the people. The people need to be entertained. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag, What Makes You Famous. Let's learn some stuff right here on the What Makes You Smarter program.
Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Friday, April 24th, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, House passes $484 billion coronavirus relief bill. The House of Representatives on Thursday passed a $484 billion coronavirus relief bill in a lopsided 388-5 vote. The Senate approved the package on Tuesday, and President Trump was expected to quickly sign it. The deal provides $310 billion to replenish the Paycheck Protection Program to help small businesses continue paying employees as the coronavirus crisis shuts down much of the economy. The package also includes $60 billion for separate emergency loan and grant program involving small banks in rural and urban areas, $75 billion for hospitals and healthcare providers, and $25 billion for coronavirus testing. Republicans had pushed to fund just Trump's request for $250 billion for the small business loan program, but Democrats insisted on adding money for hospitals and testing. This is according to the Associated Press and the Washington Post. Number 2, doctors condemn Trump idea of treating COVID-19 with disinfectant injections after a Homeland Security official explained that sunlight and bleach can kill the coronavirus on surfaces. President Trump suggested treating COVID-19 patients by hitting their lungs with ultraviolet or, quote, very powerful light, end quote, or injecting them with disinfectant. Quote, is there a way we can do something like that by injecting inside or almost a cleaning, end quote. Trump said during the daily White House coronavirus briefing Thursday. Doctors said that injecting or ingesting cleaning products was a terrible, potentially deadly idea. Quote, it's a common method that people utilize when they want to kill themselves, end quote, said Dr. Vin Gupta, a pulmonologist and NBC News contributor. Dara Cass, associate professor of emergency medicine at Columbia University Medical Center, said a U.S. emergency room will, quote, probably get a bleach ingestion because of this, end quote. This is according to NBC News and the Washington Post. Number 3, Elizabeth Warren's oldest brother dies from COVID-19. Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat, Massachusetts, announced Thursday that her oldest brother, Donald Reed Herring, quote, died from the coronavirus, end quote, this week. He was 86. Quote, he was charming and funny, a natural leader, end quote, Warren said in a series of tweets. Quote, what made him extra special was his smile. He had a quick, crooked smile that seemed to generate its own light and to light up everyone around him, end quote. Warren thanked the medical staff who took care of him. Quote, but it's hard to know that there was no family to hold his hand or to say I love you one more time, and no funeral for those of us who loved him to hold each other close, end quote. Warren, a frequent critic of President Trump's handling of the coronavirus crisis, often spoke of her brothers during her unsuccessful run for the Democratic presidential nomination. This is according to CNN. Number 4, antibody tests suggest 2.7 million New Yorkers exposed to coronavirus. Nearly 14% of 3,000 supermarket shoppers tested in the state of New York were found to have coronavirus antibodies in their systems. Governor Andrew Cuomo, Democrat, said Thursday. More than 21% of the roughly 1,300 tests on people in New York City came back positive. The accuracy of antibody testing in the United States has been questioned. But Cuomo said if the results provide a true picture, nearly 2.7 million people in the state and 1.7 million in New York City have been exposed, far more than the 250,000 infections officially recorded in the state. A positive antibody test doesn't mean that people have COVID-19, but it indicates exposure that has prompted their bodies to build up immunity to the virus. Quote, what does it mean? End quote, Cuomo said. Quote, I don't know. End quote. This is according to the New York Times. Number 5, another 4.4 million Americans apply for jobless benefits. The Labor Department reported Thursday that 4.4 million Americans filed initial applications for jobless benefits last week. That means that 26.5 million Americans have now filed unemployment claims in the last 5 weeks as the coronavirus pandemic shut down businesses across the country. The United States has now lost all of the jobs it gained in the record-long hiring boom that followed the Great Recession. Other economic data, including a March plunge in the new home sales, confirmed that business activity has fallen to an all-time low. Quote, at this point, it would take a miracle to keep this recession from turning into the Great Depression 2, end quote, said Chris Rupke, chief economist at MUFG in New York. This is according to Reuters. Number 6, Cuomo slams McConnell for suggesting letting states go bankrupt. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, Democrat, pushed back against Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican Kentucky, for suggesting the federal government let states struggling with the cost of the coronavirus go bankrupt. McConnell dismissed calls for Congress to approve more funding for state and local governments as, quote, blue state bailouts, end quote. Cuomo slammed McConnell for what he described as, quote, obsessive political bias and anger, end quote, calling the idea of letting New York and other states go bankrupt, quote, one of the really dumb ideas of all time, end quote, saying the U.S. economy would be devastated if New York couldn't pay its bills. He also noted that New York sends the federal government billions more dollars than it gets back, while McConnell's home state of Kentucky relies on billions in federal money. Quote, Senator McConnell, who's getting bailed out here? End quote, Cuomo asked. This is according to CNBC and Politico. Number 7, study. Coronavirus could affect presidential vote in some states. Mass coronavirus casualties could cost President Trump victories in battleground states in the fall election, potentially shifting electoral votes to presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden, according to an analysis published by academic researchers in the journal Administrative Theory and Praxis. Quote, the pandemic is going to take a greater toll on the conservative electorate leading into this election, and that's simply just a calculation of age, end quote, said Andrew Johnson, the lead author and a professor of management at Texas A&M University, Corpus Christi. Quote, the virus is killing more older voters, and in many states, that's the key to a GOP victory, end quote. For example, about 11,000 more Republicans than Democrats 65 or older could die in both Michigan and North Carolina, which could swing tight races. This is according to Politico. Number 8, Treasury tells big companies to return loans intended for small businesses. The Treasury Department on Thursday ordered big public companies to return loans they received but that were meant for small businesses under the Paycheck Protection Program that was part of the coronavirus relief legislation. More than 100 publicly traded companies have received loans under the program, which quickly burned through its $350 billion in funding and is now slated to be replenished with hundreds of billions more. Treasury gave large companies until May 7th to return the money. Quote, any borrower that applied for a PPP loan prior to the issuance of this guidance and repays the loan in full by May 7th, 2020 will be deemed by SBA to have made the required certification in good faith, end quote. The department said in its guidance. Ruth's Chris Steakhouse parent, Ruth's Hospitality Group, said Thursday it would return the $20 million it is getting in PPP loans. This is according to MarketWatch. Number 9, Trump administration deports Haitians despite possible COVID-19 exposure. The Trump administration on Thursday deported 129 Haitians despite evidence that some had been exposed to the COVID-19 coronavirus at a detention center in the United States. The Washington Post reported Thursday, citing the Institute for Justice and Democracy in Haiti. Quote, the U.S. is deporting all over the Americas without testing to see who may have picked up the virus in crowded ICE detention facilities, end quote, said Steve Forrester, the non-government organization's immigration policy coordinator. Quote, that's unconscionable and a deadly time bomb for the receiving nations, end quote. Haiti officials told HuffPost that they were worried that the arrival of deportees could speed up the spread of the virus in the Caribbean nation, which has severely limited medical infrastructure. This is according to the Washington Post and HuffPost. Number 10, child vaccination rates fall as families skip doctor's visits. Children's vaccination rates have fallen by as much as 73% as parents skip their children's regular doctor's visits due to the coronavirus pandemic. The New York Times reported Thursday. Data from 1,000 independent pediatricians showed that measles, mumps, and rubella vaccinations dropped 50% between February and April. Diphtheria and whooping cough shots fell 42%, and HPV vaccines plunged 73%. The trend has exacerbated the risk of children catching these diseases once they return to school, while official vaccination records from the past 2 months aren't available yet. Quote, anecdotal evidence and subsets of data are alarming, end quote, according to the Times. This is according to the New York Times. That's 10 things you need to know today for Friday, April 24th, 2020. I hope everyone's doing reasonably well. Let me know what's going on in your neck of the woods. Drop me some comments. This has been What Makes You Smarter. If you'd like to tell your story or hear the stories of others, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. That's it for me. It's Keys Dan, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here.
If you like what you hear, I encourage you to follow What Makes You Smarter on social media. Find it on Facebook at What Makes You Smarter, Instagram at What Makes You Smarter, Twitter at SmarterWhat, and YouTube. Username Keys Dan. Leave What Makes You Smarter podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Smarter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. My personal favorite, learn with me on my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time for What Makes You Famous. Support What Makes You Smarter podcast using the PayPal, paypal.me/KeysDan. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Smarter is a production of Keys Dan Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for